Today we're going to do an officer-involved shooting review. This one's going to be different than anything I've ever done. This is the officer-involved shooting that ended in the death of a man named Jonathan Price. The officer that shot Jonathan Price, his name was Sean Lucas. This occurred in Wolf City, Texas. Recently, in a jury trial, Officer Lucas was found not guilty of murder. To put it mildly, I strongly disagree with this verdict. That's what we're going to talk about today. So today we're going to talk about the killing of Jonathan Price in Wolf City, Texas. The way this came about, or the reason it's on my radar and the reason I'm making this video today, is because somebody mentioned it in the comment section of one of my videos. They said, hey, what do you think about the officer who shot Jonathan Price being found not guilty? I get these questions a lot, and I'm often confronted by people who kind of expect me to answer for the wrongs of every police officer that's ever lived. And I get messages through Facebook, Instagram, email, YouTube comment sections where they're bringing up all these incidents and they're making an accusation against the police officers. Quite often, this is a little game of like the boy who cried wolf, because they're misrepresenting the facts of the case when they bring these up. Two of the big ones that I can point out are the shooting of Michael Brown, the whole hands up, don't shoot, and then also the Jacob Blake case that happened a little bit more recently out in Wisconsin. These are cases where the officers were cleared, and they were cleared for appropriate reasons, but the public at large, or at least the segment of the public that will view everything the police do as bad for all time, they're never happy. I assumed this is another one of those cases. So before I answer the guy's question, because I wasn't familiar with the case, I went ahead and looked it up. The story that I found was very damning, but it was from a media source that I don't really trust. So I looked for the video. I found the video, and I don't understand how this guy was acquitted of murder. I watched the video myself. I sent it to a group of my friends and asked them to look at it. It's very short. It's like 2 minutes. At least the guts of the video is about 2 minutes. And none of them could understand why either. So I replied back to this guy, and I can't remember who it was that suggested I look into this. But I said, I think the reason that he was found not guilty is because the prosecutor dropped the ball. Frankly, I don't understand how a jury found this guy not guilty. The shooting occurred on October the 3rd, 2020. It was referred to the Texas Rangers, as all police-involved shootings in the state of Texas are, as far, that's my understanding. He was arrested 2 days later, and he was held in jail without bond for 2 years awaiting trial. And then when he was found not guilty, he was released from jail as if nothing had ever happened. He's a free man. The fact that he was arrested 2 days after the shooting should give you a little bit of perspective on the strength of the case and the evidence mounted against him. I don't know how, after watching this video, anybody could give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's watch the video now, and then I'll give you my thoughts on what happened after you've had a chance to see it.
Can I have you be en route to cover 103 at a possible fight in progress at the quick check in Wolf City? It's going to be at 103 Santa Fe Street. 103 Santa Fe Street. If you could roll that way until he checks code A.
10-4, en route. 103, got him out. What's up?
Hey guys, don't mention this parking lot like that's not a good idea. Here, give that back to Ringo right there. What's going on, bro? You going to good?
Yeah.
Huh?
Back up.
You doing good?
Yeah, stand right there. Do you understand me?
Hey. What's going on?
Stand right there.
You doing good?
Yeah, you're going to stand right there, okay? Do you understand me? Stand right there.
I hope you have a good night tonight. It's okay, okay? I'm sorry about the broken glass right here.
You did this?
I didn't do this, but
Okay.
he tried to like wrap me up and shit.
Okay. Well, go ahead and turn around for right now, okay?
I'm not trying
No,
to.
you're not. You're gonna turn around. Is this the guy?
I can't be detained right now.
You're gonna be detained.
I can't be detained right
You're
now.
gonna be detained.
I can't. Hey,
You're gonna be detained. Hey, quit it. You're gonna be detained. You're gonna be detained. Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back now. You're gonna get tased. Do you understand me? Put your hands behind your back. But
Hey, that was uncalled for, bro.
get back. Get back. Get on the ground now. Get on the ground. Get on the ground. Get on the ground. Get on the ground.
So there's the incident. Quick breakdown. He was dispatched on a call about a possible fight. He works in a small town with 1,400 residents, 3 police officers. He was the only police officer on duty that night. His backup, if you listen to the call at the beginning, was a deputy from county. The deputy was sent to back him up. He was basically rolling up on scene as he was being dispatched because it only takes about 2 minutes to get across the entire town. He exited his car. Remember, the call is about a possible fight, is what the dispatcher said. He walks up to the gas station and he's initially greeted by somebody who didn't appear to speak very good English, was telling him about the problem was over there. He walks up on the porch area, whatever, of this gas station, and he's greeted by Mr. Jonathon Price. Jonathon Price was highly intoxicated. He was intoxicated but friendly and cooperative when he walked up. He even said, "Hey, I'm sorry for what happened there." That's when Officer Lucas determined, "Hey, I'm here for a problem. You appear to be involved in that problem, so you are going to be detained." Mr. Price does not want to be detained and starts to walk away. And that's where everything kind of goes bad. I would say that the first major mistake, though, on Officer Lucas's part is that he just immediately went for his taser and didn't try to go hands-on at all. There's been an increasing of officer-involved shootings that have begun because an officer went for his taser in a situation that might not be appropriate. He was dispatched on a call about a possible fight. It wasn't necessarily a fight. It wasn't an assault. There was no victim. He doesn't actually know what was going on. So you have to keep that in mind when you're making decisions on the amount of force that you're going to use in order to detain somebody for that investigation. If I walked up and I was in that situation talking to a drunk guy who appeared to be cooperative and was talking about what he had done and was willing to at least speak, I probably would have said, "Hey, what's your name?" "Okay, Jonathan, why don't you walk over here with me? We're going to talk about that." I would talk to him over alone while I waited for my backup. And I might even, after I talked to him for a little bit and had developed a rapport with him, try to convince him to sit in the car. That would give me the opportunity to know where he was while I went and talked to the alleged victim of whatever had happened. Instead, he decides to threaten this guy with being detained and immediately pulls his taser. He pulls his taser at extremely close range, holds it like a dumbass, cocked to the side, and does a deployment. I couldn't tell if he got both darts in Mr. Price's arm or if only one dart hit Mr. Price's arm and the other dart missed. Often when you hold your taser at an angle like that, rather than up and down, because the darts are going to fly one true and one out, when you hold it at an angle, the other dart is going to completely miss your subject. I couldn't tell where the darts were, and I haven't seen any of the medical examinations. I'm willing to bet he only got one dart in. When you only get one dart in, you're not going to have an effective taser deployment. He then started to yell at Mr. Price and kept hitting the trigger on his taser, when what we were trained to do is go ahead and drop that cartridge, reload another cartridge, re-engage the suspect, especially as Mr. Price was kind of helping increase that reactionary gap. what the officer did in this situation is he closed that reactionary gap down and held his taser out to a place where Mr. Price was able to reach up and get a hand on it. The other thing that he did that is not something police officers are trained to do is he was holding his taser in one hand and his gun in the other. That is not something that any police officer has ever been taught to do, ever. So when Mr. Price went up to swat the officer's taser away, the officer already had his gun out and began firing, shot him 4 times, and killed him. There's absolutely no excuse for this. No excuse for this whatsoever. I don't know why the jury didn't find him guilty. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. Now, when I look at something like this, and we're in this like police reform kind of world right now, I want to tell you about what I think about and what, if I was in charge of the world and if people actually listened to me when it came to police reform, some of the changes that I would implement to prevent this from happening. I found an article that talked about his training. It said he had 8 hours of non-lethal training, whatever. We all know that some academies are better than other academies. I don't know how it works in the state of Texas, but I know that I went through my required 8 hours of taser training, but through my academy and my annual training, I probably get, as far as taser goes, probably 16 to 24 hours annually. I don't just get the 8-hour class and then they send you out to go. We also watch videos on using the taser. We get a lot of updated training and stuff like that. So the academy stuff, I don't know, that kind of is what it is, and I'm not going to touch that. That's kind of agency dependent, but it kind of goes into my next point, is that this officer works for a department that only has 3 officers. It's a community of 1,400 people. I've touched on this in the past, that and there's a variety of reasons. I don't think small police departments like this should be allowed to exist. I think there should maybe be a minimum standard where if you can't, I don't know what the right number is, but I'm going to throw out 50. If you can't support an agency of 50 total sworn, then your jurisdiction should be handled by the county or the state. I feel strongly about that. There's a variety of reasons. For one, when you're a very small jurisdiction like that, you're not going to be able to pay officers. All of the candidates that are good candidates, that are going to be good police officers, are going to go to surrounding areas. Like, I think this place is like 45 minutes to an hour away from Dallas. If you were a smart candidate, a good, well-qualified person, would you go to Dallas where you can make, I don't know, $40 an hour, or would you go to Wolf City where you're going to be making $14 an hour? It's a no-brainer. If you're a qualified candidate, you're going to go to the larger agencies. And I think that we have a responsibility to kind of promote a minimum pay for police officers in order to attract the right kinds of candidates to those jobs, so that you don't get these dumbasses that can't get hired anywhere else, and they're out there working in this city where they're the only officer working with no checks and balances, and they can go out there and make these kind of mistakes. The other thing is that when you work for a larger agency, you're intermingling with experienced officers on a more regular basis. This guy was 22 years old at the time, had been a police officer for 6 months. He works in a town with only 3 police officers. So the majority of his career, he spent being the only police officer working. Where I work, we probably have on my zone 20 plus officers working at any given time. So when I was a brand new officer, and I've talked about this on the channel before, when I was a brand new officer and I was out on a run and I didn't know what I was doing, somebody else would step up and take over for me. Or maybe I wasn't the first officer on a run, maybe I was the second or third officer, and I got to watch an experienced officer handle that run, so that next time I was in that situation, I knew what to do. We would also, after a run was over, I would call them up on the phone and ask them questions about what happened. Or once we've solved whatever problem it was, and this is something that we still do, we walk out by our cars and we kind of talk about what happened. We talk about what everybody else saw, and we discuss whether or not any of us made a mistake. It's not so formal, but it kind of happens that way. I know that I had a run with one of my buddies the other day where, you know, it kind of went a certain way and I could feel a little bit of tension between him and I. And when we got back out to the car, I said, hey, you know, I told him to do this and I didn't feel like you wanted him to do that. I didn't step on your toes, did I? And he told me kind of what he was experiencing through his perspective. And I was like, I apologized. Like, oh man, I was like, I had no idea, but it, you know, it worked out. And then we all learn from these things when we move on. When you don't interact with other police officers, you don't get those opportunities. So if you really wanted to bring about some kind of reform that's really going to change things and prevent situations like this from happening, or at least decrease the odds of something like this from happening, I would say that we need to have a real talk about jurisdictions being able to hire their own police officers and whether or not that is a good thing, and what perhaps the minimum size of an agency should be in order to promote proper training, staffing, you know, information being passed along, and just a all-around knowledge base. If not, I believe that the county and the state should be responsible for covering those jurisdictions. And I think that the federal government and the state should be able to make monies available for that appropriately. So at the end of the day, I wanted to come out in the affirmative and just say that I do believe that Jonathon Price was murdered illegally by a police officer. I believe that this police officer needs to be held accountable. I hope the federal government steps in and charges him. Even if he's only given like a 10-year manslaughter, I think that something needs to happen, because him being found not guilty and getting to walk free after something like this happening, it's just not acceptable. Those are going to be my thoughts for today. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to you soon.